Hi, this is Lacey,
Hi, this is Matt.
and we're at the Web Summit in Lisbon, Portugal. So we're just here in between two of the pavilions in the food area, trying to avoid wet tables and
Yeah.
both get into the frame.
Yeah, you
So-
come to Lisbon, you expect it to be sunny. We haven't had that, have we?
Yeah, well, it's sunny and rainy, which
Well,
works,
yeah,
right?
sometimes. I blame me. I came from London.
Yeah,
and
right.
it's-
You had to bring the rain.
exactly.
Yeah. Cool. So we wanted to share with you some of the fun new buzzwords and terms that we've heard here that we think you might want to know about and just be aware of in your day-to-day work.
Absolutely. So, buzzwords, buzz phrases, anything we've heard in the last few days that, I don't know, seem to be new to us.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So I think the way we'll do it, we can just read out the terms and then
we can explain them.
describe them later. Or do you? Yeah, let's do it all in one cut. That's
Okay,
good.
so the five that I had, I'll go the least interesting to maybe the most interesting. So, heard the term resource or team augmentation, used as justification for or rationalization for AI, in the sense that your team is empowered by increased productivity, given that they are working with AI, as opposed to being disenfranchised that their role is being taken away by it. So that was one that I thought was notable.
So say it again. What's the
So
term?
resource or team augmentation with AI.
Okay.
So we heard an interesting one yesterday, which is ESG is the data which makes sustainability real, which seemed like a bit of a strange statement to make. I think we've rationalized it by saying that ESG forms the structures and the processes, and gives you the how to achieve sustainability goals. So I think that's the way we've decided to interpret that one. So this was a good one. So next best experience, and experience is a theme actually a lot that we've heard quite a bit with regards to the NFT environment, but also in terms of marketing. And next best experience, they believe, is a term that goes beyond next best action, because the next best interaction you may want to have with your customer may not be to sell them something or with any particular goal. It might simply be a piece of information that you want to impart, and that's actually the most valuable thing that you can do. And then some really obscure ones. So data is similar to hope, which is an interesting take.
What does it mean?
Well, I think what it was meant to say is that data itself. It was in a presentation that says data isn't a strategy.
And this is in the session by JD Deco, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So the chief data officer of JD Deco, and he had gone through a large scale transformation project, and it was a very interesting conversation. He had some interesting things to say about prioritizing how your people strategy above your data strategy.
Right.
But essentially, the data is similar to hope in that hope is an important ingredient to achieving something, but it in itself doesn't really give you something tangible to achieve, and nothing tangible to go for. So that in itself is interesting.
Yeah.
And lastly, which I thought was actually quite a nice one, but so treating AI like a car, and they liken AI to a car, in that if you give somebody the ability to work with it, they don't necessarily need to be a driver of a car. You don't need to know how the engine works, and AI is similar. To work with AI and to use AI to improve your productivity, you don't necessarily need to know how the nuts and bolts of it work to improve yourself and to improve productivity.
Yeah, those are cool.
Yeah, and that's
really
my five.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I like
What about
it.
you, Lacey?
Yep. So I've got five as well. The first one is a term called green line, and so this was brought up in the same sustainability session with Shell and Databricks and the other Kohnberg. And the idea was basically that. Oh no, sorry, this was earlier. So this was in a session with SAP. And they talked about how we track asset flows and financial flows, but that also in the same way they aspired to track impact of a company on the environment. So I think we all are familiar with that idea, but now they're calling it the green line. So like the bottom line, the green line, right? Interesting. Another one we heard was about, it was in an innovation session, and they talked about the sweet site gap. So the gap between the C-suite and a site, like a manufacturing site or a facility. And that a lot of times, I think we find this as consultants, but people on the front line or in a site may have a lot of ideas about improving operations or making a company more effective. And sometimes those ideas don't make it up to the C-suite.
Yep.
So sweet site gap was the idea there. one is one that I talked about already in the video about the Frances Haugen session, but a non-content solution. So this is particularly in a social media or social network setting. The idea is that there are technical solutions that filter content, but they don't use a topic or content to do that filtering. So it's not a censorship mechanism. Instead, it looks at the likely outcome of a certain piece of content and then filters based on that outcome, as opposed to saying, content about a certain with a certain word in it, a keyword is filtered out.
And it's interesting that that one's become a topic, given the almost a war of words, or a war of abstraction of words that's going between Facebook or Meta and Frances. So it's clear that that's like a way she's trying to have a nice way of expressing what the problem is, that I guess distills through some of the ways that people are describing, or trying to own the narrative of how the leak is being described.
No, that's really interesting. And, she talked about, just flipping back to my notes, she talked about the idea that censorship and free speech is a false dichotomy.
Yeah.
And I think that's how they're trying, like with a technical solution, saying you can still create a safe environment without censoring a topic based on some other proxy of filtering. So, definitely interesting.
Exactly.
And then the last one, I've got two more. One more was in a session about engineering velocity. They talked about the Mythical Man Month. So I think this is a book that came out probably decades ago, but the idea is that you can't just throw more bodies at roadmap to increase velocity and capacity. That actually, the bigger the software, the larger the code base gets, the more complex development becomes, and that slows velocity. And so it's actually different than maybe like in a manufacturing setting where you can just open the throttle and put more bodies at a manufacturing line and get more work done. That actually it's Mythical Man Month. And then the last one, I actually talked about it in one of the previous sessions. So there's a lot of buzzwords around Web3, but one of the interesting ones is a decentralized autonomous organization. So essentially these are the entities that somehow govern blockchain and distributed apps and data. So whether one really exists yet to be determined. Haven't come across it. The ones that are presenting here are not actual DAOs yet. So we'll probably see more of that coming up.
Hopefully.
Yeah, super. So and we'll be back, I'm sure, later with some other content.